Your company is growing, and you know you need legal protection as you enter this new stage. But finding a good business lawyer is a struggle. Maybe you've tried working with the big law firms, but you always end up feeling like your company is at the bottom of their priority list. You need a lawyer who actually specializes in small businesses. At Bevel Law, our mission is to give small businesses a big voice. We help companies like yours navigate legal issues, beef up legal protection, and secure intellectual property like trademarks and copyrights. Your company deserves a lawyer who believes in your vision and wants to help you obtain it. Click the link in the show notes to learn about Bevel Law and schedule a call today.
When I was working at West Elm, some other creative who was in the industry was in talking about my artwork because I would sit there and paint in the West Elm. And they're like, Trader Joe's hires chalk sign artists to do work like this in stores. And I was like, wait, what? So all the big signs you see, all even to the little price tags, someone is hired to sit in the back and do those for every location. And so I called Trader Joe's. I literally called Monrovia, California, and left the message on some machine. I was like, hey, I'm an artist in DC. I know you're opening up 3 new locations. I would like to come be an artist on one of the sign teams for the new locations. They literally called me back the next day and was like, hey, great. We'll set you up with an interview. Head over to your local Trader Joe's.
Welcome to the Legal Upgrade Podcast, a show about the legal side of business where I break down key legal strategies and host founders who have built small businesses from the ground up. My name is Christian Hammond, your host and a licensed attorney based in Washington, D.C. As always, nothing in this podcast is financial, legal, tax, or investment advice. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Legal Upgrade Podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Sam Testa, who is the owner, founder, and artist of Right Place Studios in Washington, D.C. You may have visited her shop in Brooklyn Arts Walk or experienced one of her brand activations live. And if you haven't, you definitely should. She is known for her DC-focused artwork, and it is such an honor to have her on today. Sam, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
I cannot wait. So we're going to start by taking it way back to the beginning. And can you tell us, where did you grow up and what were you like as a kid? Were you entrepreneurial? Were you that kid with the lemonade stand? What was it like way back when?
It's so interesting to look back on little Sam and what she was doing. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. I have always done artwork since I was a little kid. I'd make pictures for the whole family and they wanted no more, but I was not going to stop. I loved reading. I was looking back, it's interesting to see I had a lot of introverted qualities. Now I consider myself more of an extrovert. I'm a little bit of both, but I definitely was always in a book. I was always drawing by myself. I was the oldest daughter, so very kind of particular, if you will. And I don't think I had that entrepreneurial spirit in the fashion of, I'm going to make this thing and sell it for money. I didn't really grasp that until later in life, but I did have the passion for what I was doing. I loved to do artwork, and I just figured everyone else would love my artwork just as much. So forcing my passion on others maybe has transferred to today. But, I was lucky to grow up in a family that supported the arts and helped my art flourish. My grandfather was a fantastic artist. He was never classically trained or anything, but we would just sit and draw together, and he would give me his old books of cartoons to practice drawing from. I still have a set of his brushes that I use today. I'm kind of scared to use them because they're cracking and falling apart. He has since passed, but I actually named my daughter Andy after my grandfather Andrew, who taught me all, he taught me less technique and more about taking risks, more about pursuing things that you love to do and sitting and making time for them. he was teaching me to do that without really teaching me to do that, right? Just by modeling, making the time to draw and to paint and to read. And if you love it, other people will love it too. So that's the origin story of Sam. I actually have a funny photo of me dressed in a suit. It, like, like 90s casual for Christmas. My mom put me in this
Yep.
blazer with the shoulder pads and a nice little skirt and pantyhose, and it just like it's got to be a meme somewhere, like dress for the job you want. I don't know, like I probably have the spirit in me at some point, but really I was a pretty cautious kid. I'm a cautious adult. It kind of has transferred through how I've operated my business and how it continues to run. Thoughtful, I'm reserved. I like to sit back and watch things happen and go with the flow a little bit. So that's how I started.
I love that. I am also an oldest child, and I feel like, oldest children, we're the first ones, and we're kind of like, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to have my ducks in a row, that oldest child
Also,
syndrome.
managing expectations. I see my daughter now. If things don't go exactly right, I'm not a perfectionist. I would not categorize myself or type A. I am not those things, but I do have a certain idea of how I want things to go. And if they don't, it throws me. So I had to adapt to that over the years. I don't know if you've felt that. Are you a perfectionist as the oldest daughter?
I am
You are.
definitely that like stereotypical Enneagram 1 perfectionist.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
For
mm-hmm.
better or for worse.
Yeah.
Maybe
At
for
least you
worse, I
saw the
don't
light.
know.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
recognize ourselves. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, did you have, as a kid, were you like, oh, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be?
So first it started, I don't know what got me to this mindset. I wanted to work at Subway so that I could do my homework while I made subs in Youngstown, Ohio. And then I grew up and I realized, I wanted to do something different. But in the bigger picture, I always wanted to be a teacher. I have a sister who's 11 years younger than me. And so I grew up kind of teaching her what to do and how to do it. There's that older sister, really liked bossing people around. And I think that transferred over to realizing I loved helping people learn new things. And I always wanted to be a teacher. And I did end up being a teacher for about 9 years.
Wow. So I feel like that's almost kind of rare to be like, as a kid, okay, this is what I want to do, and then to actually end up doing that thing. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's kind of rare. So tell us about that. What was it like kind of entering the teaching world and kind of realizing that childhood goal?
Mm. I remember, I don't, you have these sparks of memories from childhood. I remember sitting in my fourth grade teacher's classroom, Mrs. Ondomacy. She was a wild one. And I remember thinking, when I'm a teacher, I want to make sure I do this. And I don't even know what it was, but I remember at the time thinking, this is impactful to me as a kid. I like this. I'm going to do that when I'm older. It wasn't that I can't remember at this time, but I knew that I was meant to do that. I do have a certain well of patience to pull from for people and children. When I was in college, I was thriving student teaching. I was teaching second graders. And then when I graduated college, I got a job in DC and teaching first grade in Fairfax County. And at the time, Fairfax County, it still is the biggest school district in Virginia, as far as I know. And it's
Mhm.
one of the most successful in terms of, how it was one of the most successful, one of the best school districts. And
So you moved then to the DC area. Would that have been after college, or did you also go to college in the DC area?
after college, so 2008, I graduated college. I moved here kicking and screaming, Christian. I did not want to come to DC. I came here because I got a job, and I'm like, you know what? I'll go to Chicago in a year because I didn't get a job.
Right.
I wanted to go to Chicago. I got the job here. And I thought, you know what? I'll just adjust and I'll move in a year or two because I'm flex. And then I
Right.
realized I had just a really fortuitous, like culmination of all my closest friends from college and study abroad moved here, and I had made so many friends in a year. It was bizarre how many people actually landed here. So I never left, and it's been almost 17 years that I've lived here in DC. So I got the job in Fairfax County, was very excited to start my career as a teacher. I loved teaching. I loved being around kids. And I think it was a good challenge. I mean, any first year teacher will tell you, I don't know if my kids learned anything that year, but I learned so much on the job. And I loved how every day is different. And I loved how you were working on a portfolio for a year and there was a start and a finish and it was kind of wiped clean. But within that portfolio, every day was different. And so then the next year, the portfolio is similar, but there are different nuances every day. And I really like that change up. I don't know if it's the way my brain works or what, but I like not doing the same thing every day. I like having the mental challenge of fitting things in, kind of like a puzzle. So that was really fun for me and challenging in a good way. And I felt like it was a very noble profession. I was proud to tell people I was a teacher.
Yeah.
I still get, emotional about it because it was such a important part of my life and taught me so much, but it also was the hardest job ever.
Mm.
I mean, just
Yeah.
emotionally, physically exhausting. By the end of my 9 years, I knew it was time. I mean, I was absolutely sure it was time because I wasn't doing the kids a service anymore and I wasn't doing myself a service by being there. So, um,
Yeah. I can only imagine. I don't know if you've seen the show Abbott Elementary, but my
mm,
husband and I are currently watching it and it's our new sitcom that we're obsessed with, but
I love it.
every so often the episodes turn a little more serious and it's
Mm-hmm.
like this is a hard job. Like
Mm,
this is a really
mm.
really hard
I get
job.
I get goosebumps when I think about it because it just it was so much pressure and very little resources, very little human resources. You need more people in a classroom and you just don't have that. So I commend all teachers. They are truly doing heroic work. My daughter's in daycare now and I just like bow at the feet of the daycare of the teachers. I'm like, I will do whatever you need me to do to make your life easier because you are doing something that I am unable to anymore.
When did you start to think, I might be looking for something different. I might want to transition. And when did you start to think, and kind of how did you start to think, oh, maybe that transition might be to art?
Right. So I think in any job, like most jobs, I got comfortable in my position enough that I was able to go home and like put my brain somewhere else. I was getting good at teaching, so I was starting to bring back out my artwork. I really didn't do much artwork for the first couple years of teaching because I was so overwhelmed, but I brought back out my watercolors. I actually started back up with acrylics and because that's what I had been most comfortable with. I was classically trained in college to
Oh,
do
wow.
oils, watercolors. I had a fine art minor essentially. And so I learned all the techniques. I just kind of put them all away and I brought them back out after a couple of years of teaching. And so I would, during the summers, the couple of weeks we get off, I would paint it for friends and would just draw inspiration from the city and get excited to paint. And then I realized that there was a market for this in terms of creating cards, creating illustrations, making memories. Especially now that this was my home, I liked sending people at home pictures of DC and paintings that I made, and I started selling them to my teacher friends, and we would do art fairs and that kind of thing. So right around 2000, I would say 11 is when I picked back up the art, and I made an Etsy shop, and I opened it expecting everyone to buy immediately. Like I stayed home that afternoon just in case there were some orders. There weren't, but it was fine. And I think the change really started to happen. So 2011 is when I opened the Etsy shop and started painting a lot more. And then I would say 2013, 2014 is when I started to get the itch, when I realized that I just didn't think teaching was going to be a forever end game for me. And I was pursuing administrative work in teaching and I was like, no, this is not where my life is going. I want to get paid to do what I want to do.
Mm.
And I don't care if it's less than being a teacher. I want to do what I want to do and feel passion again for my everyday work. So I started building a clientele, doing workshops, kind of extending, oh, I know how to teach. Why don't I extend this to adults? And I did that a lot with friends and close family, and eventually I got a partnership with West Elm. And it actually happened by me putting my work out there in, I believe it was 2016, perhaps 2017. They had a call for local artwork, and so I submitted my local cards, DC inspired things. I had gotten back into
How did
watercolor at
you
that point.
find out? How'd you find out about that call for local artwork?
I'd been networking for a while where I had
Okay.
found a friend of mine. She runs it was I think it would start as a wedding vendor networking group. And so I met with them. I would kind of keep an ear to the ground of what's happening. So I started connecting local artists and local events, just kind of keeping them on my radar. And I think I honestly don't remember. Someone must have sent me the West Elm, like, submit your local work. And I just applied because, again, that little Sam, my passion for this work maybe is someone else's passion for it. They might enjoy it. And I think I was never afraid to really put myself out there because my artwork felt different than me. And it wasn't like they were rejecting me if they didn't take my work in. I really do feel like I've always had a good separation of, while my artwork is representative of me, it is not who I am, right? I love
Yeah.
doing it, but I'm not offended if someone doesn't take to it. I don't take to all artwork. You don't. It's completely subjective. So anyway, I got that West Elm partnership, and they sold some of my work in the stores, and they actually were so patient and kind. They knew I was fresh, just had never done wholesale before, and they walked me through it, which is an interesting perspective to start wholesale with a big corporate company that has these very extensive protocols for SKUs and wholesale orders and minimums, and having to get all my brain wrapped around that was just wild. But it was the challenge I needed. I felt invigorated again. I was going to work all day at school and then coming home to work on my products all night, and get doing the admin, getting a website. And I think,
And
and I don't know if
how
this is,
many were they looking to buy? Like, how much product did you have to come up with for that first West Elm
gosh,
sale?
gosh, I could find the Excel. I want to say it was like $200 worth of stuff. They were
Okay.
starting small, to see how it did in stores. I think I did a pop up to gauge what did well. And so I was using Vistaprint at the time, which is, they actually have lovely cards. They're
Yeah.
stationary. You get the right paper. It's very thick. It feels very luxe. But I was doing it piecemeal, very much like, okay, I'm going to get 10 cards for this 10 buy, they want 10. So that's all I'm going to get because that's all I can afford. And really pieced it together that way. But it wasn't a very large order. But for me, I just poured my soul into the research of trying to find out, how do I do this? I was YouTubing then. I was asking friends who I trusted in the industry. Um, and something that someone has told me that I've repeated many times, and this was an aha moment for me during this time, and I was just drowning in information, is having someone who you trust, who's maybe a year in front of you, and someone who's a year behind you. I've always had that perspective, and I've been very lucky to find people who've done these things before that I can not cold call because we know each other and have developed a relationship and have a symbiotic, I'm their 1 year behind, and they're my 1 year
Right.
ahead. So I was able to touch base with those people to help me out to figure out, how do I even do this?
Yeah. And I think that's just like really cool that West Elm was like, "Hey, we're not afraid to work with a
Mm-hmm.
new artist." That's just
Mm-hmm.
really cool because me knowing nothing about this industry, it's like, "Oh my gosh, like what would that even be like?" But it's cool
Oh,
that they're like, "Hey, yeah,
yeah.
we're here for it."
And so they decided to actually bring in an artist in residence to a pop-up location in Union Market. And I was still teaching then, and they asked, could you be here at 3 o'clock on Fridays or whatever? I was like, oh God, no, I don't know if I could do it every Friday, but I would start like taking sub hours at school. This is don't, sorry, this was 10 years ago. It's fine. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would start taking sub hours because I was like, this is so much more important to me, and I see a future in this. And I think what the key driver for me, because I'm a cautious person, I wanted to make this work, but I wanted it to make me money. I wanted to be able to pay my rent independently, and that was important to me. Uh, when I was working at West Elm, some other creative who was in the industry was in talking about my artwork because I would sit there and paint in the West Elm during the holiday season. It was really fun. And they're like, Trader Joe's hires chalk sign artists to do work like this in stores. And I was like, wait, what? First of all, I love Trader Joe's. It's such a
Yes.
lovely atmosphere when you're a shopper. They do make it very nice for you. Um, but then I realized that each Trader Joe's hires chalk artists in house to do all the chalk work. So all the big signs you see,
Wow.
all even to the little price tags, someone is hired to sit in the back and do those for every location.
How?
I know.
Who
So
knew?
who knew? So then me again, here's where I'm not type A, but I'm also a Taurus, which I know you are as well, right?
Yep.
I when I get something in my brain, I have to pursue it and I will do whatever I can to pursue it. And so I called Trader Joe's. I literally called Monrovia, California and left the message on some machine. I was like, "Hey, I'm an artist in DC. I know you're opening up 3 new locations. I would like to come be an artist on one of the sign teams for the new locations." They literally called me back the next day and was like, "Hey, great. We'll set you up with an interview. Like, head over to your local Trader Joe's."
That's
So
amazing.
I
That's
know
amazing. That's like cold calling that like couldn't have turned out better.
I just cold called the whole industry, the one phone number for Trader Joe's. I don't know what I was thinking, but it worked out. And what Trader Joe's is, to their credit, they don't set you on the sign team immediately. You work through the whole system. You work as the crew, you work on the register, you work unloading, you work opening, closing, unloading trucks, unloading pallets. So I did that for a few months. In June of 2017, I left the teaching industry profession. I left teaching. I thought I'd be back. I just went on a leave because I'm like, again, cautious Sam. I'm like, I'll be back, everyone. This might not work out. Like, don't worry. I'll be back.
So wait, up until this point, were
Yeah.
you simultaneously teaching, working at Trader Joe's, and still doing the Fridays for West Elm all at the same
No,
time?
I did jump. I got a little excited
Okay.
here and I jumped forward, but 2015 is when I started really going home and doing these things at night. 2017, no, it must have been earlier. It must have been 2016. The winter of 2016 is when I got the West Elm Partnership, started teaching classes with them, started doing more work with them, and then I got the job with Trader Joe's on the assumption I would start in June when I left teaching. So I
Got
never
it.
did all 3 simultaneously. I did teaching in West Elm / my business, and then I did Trader Joe's in my business. And then I left Trader Joe's in January of 2019 because I was working 1 day a week at that point because I was so busy with my job, with my business. And
Wow.
I just slowly, they were so patient with me. Every week I'd go to the scheduler, or every month they'd be like, "Hey, I know I'm at 5 days. Can I go down to 4?" And they'd be like, "All right, that's fine." And then like the next time, "Hey, can I go down to 3 days or 2 days?" And eventually I'm like, "All right, I'm not doing anyone a service here now." So I left Trader Joe's in 20 early 2019. So I stayed there for about a year and a half. About a year and a half.
Wow. That's amazing. So you're like, okay, I love that you kind of like took it down
Yeah.
incrementally, like, okay, full time, okay, 4 days, that you
Uh-huh.
were doing this like transition as you were building your business.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it really, it is only because of the patient people who helped me work through that scheduler, Trader Joe's in general, the fact that they let me do that, I'm very grateful. And I just, like I said, I wanted it to get paid to do what I wanted to do, and Trader Joe's was that. I was sitting in the back drawing, painting, and I actually had a fantastic partner back there who was also on the sign team. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met. And he taught me a lot about the art. I think I taught him a lot about the business aspect because I was such a go getter. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going here this week. I'm going here. I'm emailing this person." So I was able to do a lot of stuff for my business while also being at Trader Joe's too. So that really just helped facilitate this whole spectrum of leaving teaching. It's all part of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know because I know you personally that you have a lot of really cool clients and have over the years. Was it that first partnership with West Elm that kind of led then to other commercial clients, or were those just things that happened organically? What did it look like as you were like, okay, I'm leaving Trader Joe's and I'm kind of going into my business full time? What did things start to look like from there as far as finding those different clients or commercial clients?
Mm-hmm. So West Elm was a great jumping point because they wanted to do a lot of different things. They wanted to teach workshops, which I was like, I can do that. They wanted to do artwork specific of DC, which I'm like, this is it. This is my jam. And they wanted to also host events. So I would host ornament making events. They wanted me to teach people how to do calligraphy, which honestly, I had just started probably a year or two prior. So, and that was a big wave of uh, like a very trending uh, hobby, I would say. So I jumped on that pretty early. And I think West Elm allowed me to teach workshops to, a group of 20 people. And those 20 people work at 20 different places, most likely, and have 20
Mm-hmm.
or at least 10 different groups of friends. So really the workshops are where I was able to make those connections. I would get an email maybe 2, 3 weeks later and be like, hey, I was in your workshop. I do the events for Bloomingdale's. Would you come out and do, fragrance engraving or this and that? So, and actually, I wasn't even engraving at that time. I was just doing calligraphy. So, would you come make stationery for people who buy gifts? And so, these live event brand activations were really starting to pick up. I hadn't ever seen these happen in stores. I hadn't really seen calligraphy used in that way. And that's when I transitioned out of doing weddings and more less envelope kind of calligraphy and wedding reception calligraphy and more the brand activations because I loved the connections. And I found that people were just really excited to see that in store. So the workshops really are where it started. I feel like it just kind of spiderwebbed out to all of
Yeah.
these different opportunities. And it just takes knowing
So,
one person, that one person who works at this one place. It's not like I'm connected with Bloomingdale's, the higher ups. It's because I know the general manager or, have worked with them before.
yeah. So, for anyone who is not familiar with the brand activations, could you talk about that a little bit? What happens during a brand activation? Just describe that for anyone who hasn't seen one or been to one.
Sure. It's any event you're planning. So an event planner will look to see, okay, we have this launch. We want to launch a new fragrance. And so we want to bring more people in. How do we do that? We take a local micro influencer or an artist of some sort who maybe has a following, maybe doesn't, and we offer a service to draw people in and to create a buzz around the product. So for instance, I'll be doing an event with Glossier in a few weeks. They're a new release of a fragrance. And so
Nice.
they're bringing me in to engrave the bottles once you purchase them. So sometimes your brand activation, you get the fun gift as with purchase. Other times it's just a complete freebie. And this is why I felt a lot of people have stuck with me over the years. They're like, I love hearing where you're going to be because that tells me where can I get a freebie? Where can I get a personalized item? And I'm like, listen, I would do the same thing. I don't have
Yes.
the full wealth of knowledge of it, but I do have a lot going on and that we can tell you where things are at. But really, it's a way to elevate the experience for your guest or your customer or your company, whatever it is. The brand activation really helps make it special and meaningful for the party guests.
Yeah, that's amazing. So at this point, you've gone from, being a kid, drawing with your grandfather. You've then got this minor through your college experience. You bring it back with acrylic, and now you're doing calligraphy and engraving. So you're like adding on these skill sets, it sounds
Mhm.
like, kind of through the years.
Yes, and I think that was hard for me to navigate for a while because people would tell you as a business owner, do one thing and do it well. And this is going to sound so um, egotistical. I was doing a lot of things well in my own mind. And so I was like, you know
Own
what?
it. Nothing wrong
I'm
with
going to
that.
keep doing this because I enjoy it. I like doing calligraphy one day and I like watercolor. I like to paint the Washington Monument the next day. And I liked having this diverse portfolio to work from. And I also wasn't sure when any one thing would go away. Maybe my workshops would stop being so popular, and I want to make sure I have something else in my back pocket. So I was always kind of stockpiling things that I love to do that were marketable and that people wanted to experience. And What was that? Yeah, what was the question again? I lost my train of thought.
No, I feel like that's so good. And I feel like one of the things I heard you say is that as you were thinking about adding new skills, you weren't just like, it wasn't only, oh, this is something I enjoy. You were also taking that business perspective of, I know that this is something that's marketable. I know this is something people would be interested in buying. So, kind of both that passion, but also that business savvy at the same time.
Right. And I found that my business was very much a seasonal thing. I would peak for cherry blossoms because people loved my artwork with the cherry blossoms on them. And then it would kind of dip in the summer, and I would do a calligraphy and for weddings and receptions and brand activations, and then would come back up for the holidays, you know. And so I found that there was a really nice ebb and flow for a few years. I could predict a lot of what was going to happen and meet the clients that needed me throughout the year for different things. And I really liked that. I also feel like that those years are when I found my niche in terms of what
Mm,
I was painting. I found that I loved architecture. I loved, and this goes back from when I was a teacher in the summers, I would just bike around the city, up every hill. I'd walk miles of the city. Just I loved
yeah.
being in a city, and I loved being here, and I loved seeing our architecture, our landscapes, our history. It just is a really special place. And so I started focusing on DC specific watercolor. So now I'm doing calligraphy, which under that category I have engraving, I have workshops, and I'm also doing watercolor. And under that category I have paintings and I have workshops. And then under both categories I have brand activations. So it made sense to me that I could do these two components and keep it really specific underneath and then meet my clients all year long, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that just sounds genius, honestly, that you had something to meet people, like you said, as the ebbs and the flows and the different seasons, just having that savvy to know, okay, this is what's marketing really well in this season, and this is what's marketing really well in another. That just that's brilliant.
I mean, I think being stubborn really helps with a lot of these things. Like, I'm not going to give this up. Like, you can't really tell me what to do. I'm going to do what I want, but here's how I'm going to do it. And I think that's helped me a lot along the way too.
Yeah. So you said that you're a cautious person. Would you say that you're overall an optimist or a pessimist, or and how do you feel like that interacts with kind of you're cautious but also not
Mhm.
afraid to cold call Trader Joe's? Would you
Mhm.
say, yeah, would you consider yourself an optimist or a pessimist?
Is there a third category for like realist? I am
Maybe
definitely
there should
more
be.
right. I am an optimist. I do feel like the things will come back to you that you have put out there. And if I'm putting out good vibes and optimism and cold calling places, I'm hoping those will come back with the same kind of excitement. But I am a realist, and so I was thinking during that time less about, oh, I got to do this because, you know, this is the positive vibes, whatever. I was more like, okay, who's my client? What do they need? What can I pitch to them to convince them that they need my services to enhance their experience, whatever that would be? So I definitely am more of an optimist, but I'm not a pessimist. I'm definitely not a pessimist. I'm more of the I think there's that realist component, pragmatic, where I know certain things need to be done, and I try to figure out the way in which to do them to create that positive end game.
Yeah, I love that. So, how long, maybe from the time you left Trader Joe's to go full time, how long did it take you to feel like, okay, like, because I remember you saying before that you were like, I want to get paid for what I love to do. I want to be paying my rent and all those kinds of things. How long did it take from going full time in business for you to feel like, okay, this is paying my rent, paying the bills, it's doing what I wanted it to do? And if you remember, how much, what did you have to kind of put in to start the business? Was this an expensive business to start, or were you able to kind of launch your business with a relatively low investment?
I was able to launch with a low investment because at the time I was doing a lot of custom work, which has very low overhead. The highest cost is my time. And so you really don't need many materials. And that was very alluring to me that I didn't have to purchase a whole lot of inventory to sell. So I was basically purchasing inventory just enough to fit into the wholesale market that I had entered into. So West Elm places an order, I place the order to fill West Elm. Shop Made in DC places an order, I place an order with my vendors to fill Shop Made in DC. I didn't buy in bulk yet. In terms of the actual number, God, I think I told you, I wish I knew offhand. I didn't do the proper research to give you a finite number, but I think I would say I started with less than $1,000 doing custom work at the very, very
Yeah.
beginning. And then when I was ending my tenure at Trader Joe's, I was already full-fledged into my business. I probably should have quit long before, but didn't want to let people down. I didn't have any attachments except my dog. So I was like, doing things day and night. Well, I had my husband, but he wasn't my husband then. And he was very understanding. He's like, yeah, you work, you make the money, we got it. So I would say when I was leaving Trader Joe's, I think I had a couple thousand. But at that time, still, I didn't understand quite how to be an LLC properly. I think I was still mixing bank account. It was just very messy at that point. So when I left Trader Joe's, I made it a point to get
Super
very
normal as a
organized.
new business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So my money was the business's money. It was a mess. So right around 2018, 2019, I got serious about having a separate bank account. Actually, no, it was 2017. It was early on when I got my LLC that I made sure things were separate. But I probably had a couple thousand in the bank when I left Trader Joe's just to make sure that I had money to fill a couple months of rent in case I needed it. Because again, at that time, it was just for me. I'm making money so that Sam can live a prosperous life and enjoy her life and go out to dinner and do the things she wants to do and also get paid to do what she wants to do. So at that time, probably wasn't more than a couple $1,000. And of course, for wholesale, you don't get paid immediately. And if things are on consignment, you don't get paid immediately. So I'd have these nebulous bills, invoices out there that wouldn't be paid for sometimes 60 days. Some are net 90, depending on the business.
Oh,
And so I'd be
wow.
waiting for these things to come. But in the meantime, I would just churn out work. I would do custom work for people day in and day out. And that's what kind of
Wow.
helped fill those gaps where maybe I wasn't making enough to buy a huge bulk inventory. I was making enough to live because I was putting out the artwork commissions.
Yeah. So then what because now you have your brick and mortar in the Brookland Arts Walk. So what was that process like of making the decision to, because I'm assuming before that, were you working out of your home? Were you working out of like a co-working space? But what did that look like to then decide, okay, I want to have that brick and mortar spot?
Yes. It really happened during COVID. In
Wow.
2020, I pivoted to doing virtual workshops, which were just, I guess, exactly what people needed. And I was able to bank a lot of savings for my business because of the workshops. I would ship out supplies to people. And at the beginning, I was like literally wiping down the supplies, bagging them up, Lysol wipes galore, and shipping
Yep.
them out to people. And so we would do virtual classes. I would do them like 4 nights a week sometimes. And that helped me build a little nest that I could then put toward making and buying inventory in bulk. And so that's when I started getting serious about wholesale orders. I'd always done it, and I had some bulk. Behind me, this is my home setup here, but imagine this was wall to wall shelves of cards. And
Wow.
it was just crazy. I had puzzles along one wall, I had cards along the other, and it definitely started to outgrow it during COVID because I had started buying in some bulk. It wasn't the bulk in which I buy now, but enough that I filled the space I was in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I worked with my friend Adam, and we shared a booth at the Downtown Holiday Market in 2020. Because the year had gone so well, I was able to pay kind of the very high booth prices. And we weren't really sure what COVID was going to bring that year. And so we're like, hey, let's try it out. It was a discounted rate to be a vendor. And I had this little nest egg of money. So I purchased the inventory. I calculated, if I wanted to make this much, what would I have to sell in order to do that? And I bought that much. I was new. I had a new product. I had the 2020 calendar that I was releasing, 2021. 2020 calendar? 2021 calendar. Yes, it was my second calendar, which was really popular the year before. So I was really invigorated to put more of my work out there to just not my followers, local people, but tourists as well who came through. And so that is what really spurned it for me. I was sitting at the downtown holiday market looking at kind of what my brick and mortar was. It had never been a forward facing business. And I
Yeah.
told my friend Adam, I'm like, I think I need a space. And so 2021 is when I started looking for spaces. I actually knew Brookland because of Marcella and Tori Territory and Marcella Crable Illustration. I knew they were there for a long time and they really liked it. And we had grown close because of the market. And so again, these people who are a couple years ahead of me, they're like, yeah, do it. It's a great place to be because the community's great. They hold a farmer's market. There's some traffic, but you don't have to outfit the store every day with someone in the store, which was important to me because I love painting from home. And so I got the brick and mortar and was able to, and of course I move everything into the shop and I'm like, how did this fit in my house? It
Right.
again, like my business, it was a slow progression. It started with a desk in my studio apartment and then transferred to a desk in my living room of my 1-bedroom apartment. And then it transferred to a room in my 2-bedroom house. And now, I mean, if I were to pan the other way, this is also a nursery. So my home office is also my kid's nursery, which is not going to work out for much longer. So, it'll transform into something else. I'm not sure what that is, but I do like having a space at home to work because sometimes I find I'm inspired to work from home and not,
Yeah.
you know, the North Capitol trek from southeast to northeast to my shop is less than stellar. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
commuting isn't the best, but I love my studio. I love my shop. I'm so grateful it's there and really grateful that I was able to collect. And of course, COVID was just the worst of times. And it is just so happens that is when my business was able to do what it needed to do to move forward. So it's not lost on me that was a very tricky time for everybody.
Yeah, but I think that that speaks to your ability that to pivot and to say, okay, I like this is what is working for right now, so this is what I can offer. And I want to ask about that space because I think this is something people would be interested in because getting into a commercial space a lot of times can be 10-year leases and these really long leases of like 100 pages. Was that intimidating for you or were you like, nope, like I'm good.
Well, so the Brooklyn Arts Walk has been there for about 10 years. It's a very unique space, and I knew I wanted to get in there because some of our rent is subsidized by Catholic University. So
Oh,
Catholic actually
nice.
I don't know the full logistics of it, but I do know that I'm not paying market retail for my space. And that was important to me because again, being cautious, I didn't know if I could fill and man and employ and be there every day for a $3,000 a month kind of storefront. I wasn't ready for
Hmm.
that. So, and that's what, like, I live near Barracks Row. That's what we're working with over here. And plus that, like 7 grand a month, which I just couldn't
Wow.
fathom jumping into at the time. So this was a really good opportunity and the spaces don't come up very often. So I interviewed, I got in, I think I emailed them in January, didn't hear back, emailed second week of January, didn't hear back. I emailed in February. Like I just kept going at it until I heard that there was an actual opening in the Arts Walk and pursued it. I found who I needed to find. I emailed friends who were there. I was like, listen, I need this contact. And I did interview, I think, with like 16 other people who wanted the space, from what I understand. And
Wow.
they are highly coveted spaces. And I'm so grateful to be there. It is such a great community of people. So my advice is to find spaces like that where you have a community where, you know, I have a friend of mine who opened a space up in Mount Rainier where it's a collective artist space at an affordable price, because I think affordable studio space that's also front facing is very difficult to find. And so Brookland is that unique combination where we're only open 1 or 2 days a week, but I'm able to get my products direct to consumer in front of people, at least one day a week.
With your whole journey, starting in 2011 with that Etsy shop and to now, was there any move that you look back on and you're like, oh, that was kind of a misstep or a mistake, something that you're like, oh, if I could do it differently, I would have changed that? Or has it been kind of smooth relatively smooth ever since 2011.
There is no major oops for me. I don't have any single
Nice.
regret unless I've just blocked it out for self-preservation. But it's more little steps back, 3 steps forward, little steps back, few steps forward. Financially, every year is very different. But I really think I have just tried to. I guess the answer is just no. I don't have any regrets. I don't have any big setbacks. I'm very lucky in that way. I don't know if it's because of my cautious nature that has happened. I'm very risk averse. So I think I do inherently choose opportunities that I know I can perform or attain or get. Whereas someone else who's a risk taker, they might have more regrets than me and more setbacks, but those got them where they are now too. You know what I mean? And I think it's two different paths that lead to the same thing, which is doing what you want to do, creating a thriving business where you're making money. And I'm just really grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I love that perspective of just like the different
Mm-hmm.
approaches and like different
Mm-hmm.
way to approach that. Okay, so we have reached our final question, which everyone's going to be asked, which is what do you think? You've been doing this since 2011, so it's been over 10 years now. What do you think it takes to sustain 10 plus years in business? What do you think it takes to start something from nothing and keep it going a decade and beyond?
I think it takes flexibility and I would say mental fortitude
Mm,
because especially for a creative business, you're not always going to feel creative. And I learned this from a friend who took a class and she told us this, but your business is a relationship. It's just a different relationship than some human would be. I have a relationship with my business and it's going to be a flexible one. But I think it takes nurturing that relationship in the right way and having the right framework around your expectations for your business. Um, you're going to fall out of love with your business every once in a while.
mm,
But if you put the work back in, it's like any kind of therapy, you put it into practice, you give it attention, you give it a little bit of love every day, you can fall back in love with it and find new ways to make it work for you. I do think it takes that mental fortitude because you can't give up on it. You
mm.
can. If you're ready to, then that is you're ready to. I know a lot of people who closed up shop this year because all of the things didn't work. The
Yeah.
finances, the emotional toll it took on that person. And you make your decisions. But if you want to keep it going, you have to be flexible. You have to
Mm.
roll with the punches and you have to figure out what the need is for what you're putting out there.
That is so good. Thank you for sharing that amazing advice. Well, Sam, thank you so much for being here. Could you let people know where can they find you in person? Where can they find you online? And is there anything special that they should know about if they want more of you and more of Right Place Studios?
Yeah, so I'm at the Brooklyn Arts Walk every Saturday. We are open along with 27 other artist studios and a year-round farmers market from 9 till 1. I think off season it's 10 to 1 p.m. Most of us are open. If it's a nice day, everyone will have their garages open and it's a great community. Come visit us in person on Saturdays. You can also find me online on Instagram, on my website, rightplacestudio.com. I send one newsletter a month just letting you know where I'm going to be and what I'll be doing. If you want to join that, just sign up at the website, rightplacestudio.com.
Amazing. Sam, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, friend. Have a great week.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. The Legal Upgrade Podcast is a Bevel Law production. For more information about the Legal Upgrade, you can follow on Instagram at Bevel Law or find even more information on the website bevellaw.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. See you next time on the Legal Upgrade Podcast.